Thank you, Abhishek. Now, handwriting, Smritis, page number 21 of Smriti, and model answer. And the title today is very important topic: tradition and individual talent. This century is sometimes called the age of T.S.Eliot. He is a poet, dramatist, and a critic. His poetry is obscure. Poetry समझ में नहीं आता उसका, but his criticism is clear. This is one point. Now we change paragraph. First is about the poet, something about the writer, and then his three important essays are, but that is, his works are the tuck, tuck, tuck. One, tradition and individual talent. Two, the function of criticism, and the frontiers of criticism. So today we are dealing with tradition and individual talent. Eliot wants discipline in literature. In the literature also there should be discipline. He is of the classical group. Classical group means he is with Aristotle, Brighton and Arnold. They are the classical writers. People say so and so is traditional or even too traditional. The word tradition is used here in derogatory sense, means bure kharab sense mein. So thumbs down. So people do not look at tradition as something good. The word, thank you Abhishek. I'll do it. The word, thank you. The word, that is tradition, is not used in appreciation of writers. So tradition is not used in the good sense. Tradition बहुत पिछड़ा है, पुराना है. The greatness of Eliot is that he appreciates tradition. That is very important. He gives tradition thumbs up. He sees the positive side of tradition. Now the thing is, how does tradition work? Eliot answers this question. Historical sense makes a writer or a poet traditional. We study the history of literature and we compose a poem. We will find that our poetry has something in common with the poets of the older poets. We'll find that our poetry has something in common with the poetry of the older poets. No poet has his complete meaning alone. A poet has to learn the poetic language of the older poets. From the older poets we are learning. He has to be appreciated in relation to the dead poets. So tradition, dead poets and individual talent both combine and make good poetry. We have to compare and contrast the living poets with the dead. So living poets must live with the dead poets. Besides tradition, Eliot speaks of self-sacrifice. This is very important of the artist. An extinction of personality. Important of self-sacrifice and extinction of personality are important for a good artist. We find this in the poetry of Chaucer and the novels of Jane Austen. Chaucer has sympathy for human errors. Jane Austen does not interfere in the development of her character. So it happens like this. Thank you, Abhishek. Now, very important quotation. When you give quotations, then your marks will go high. The lovely quotation of T.S.Eliot: the more perfect the artist, the more completely separate in him will be the man who suffers and the mind which creates. Very important. The more perfect the artist, the more completely separate in him will be the man who suffers and the artist who creates. That means the man who is suffering is one thing and the artist who is creating is another thing. So there should be a distance between the two. I am suffering, that does not mean I will only stop crying and weeping. I have to write some poems that will inspire the other people. I can write comic poems although I am suffering. So that is a good artist. Difference between the man who suffers and the artist who creates. Eliot says that the man who is suffering and the mind that is creating are two different things. Keats, the man, suffered, but his mind composed many fine poems. So this is Keats, for example, his personal life was full of suffering, but he composed very good poems. Alright? Honest criticism is directed not upon the poet, but upon the poetry. So this is also important. Good criticism is focused on poetry and not on the poet's life. If you start examining the caste and nationality of a poet, we will not be able to do justice to his poetry. So suppose I say he's a Pakistani poet. He's bad. No, I have to see his poetry and not his nationality. That's very important. And now we are coming to the last page. Now, you see a war between two great poets. Now, there's a conflict between two poets, ideas of the two poets. Eliot disagrees with Wordsworth's theory of poetry. So, Eliot and Wordsworth have two different theories of poetry. Eliot says poetry is not a turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion. It is not an expression of personality, but an escape from personality. Very important quotation. Poetry is not a turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion. It is not an expression of personality, but an escape from personality. You see, and Wordsworth said that poetry is expression of personality. This simply means that Eliot supports the objective theory of poetry. This theory gives importance to the universal experience, objective theory. Wordsworth gives importance to his personal experience. So Wordsworth gives importance to his personal experience, and Wordsworth wants objective, universal experience. Eliot disagrees with Wordsworth and says the emotion of art is impersonal. So Wordsworth says that the emotion of art is personal, but T.S. Eliot says that the emotion of art is impersonal. So this is the objective theory. To conclude, English literature has a long history and a rich tradition. So you see, starting from 400 Chaucer and then so many poets, long tradition. The greatness of Eliot is that he sees the value of tradition and also individual talent. So Eliot's greatness is he sees the value of individual talent and he also sees the value of tradition. That's all. Thank you.